What's up, fellas? Guess what? It's time for some man talk. I am Jeffrey Tyler, founder of Good Men Do Exist, and I'm excited to be joining you this Saturday, April 29th, 8:30 a.m. in the Star Community Family Life Center. Join myself and Bishop Debnam as we have some real talk about manhood, money, relationships, careers, faith, and more. It's time to peel back the masks and come into a safe space, fellas, where we can speak our piece in peace. Join us for breakfast. Invite another brother to come with you, because every man needs another man that he can be vulnerable with and broken in front of without backlash. God didn't create us to live lives of disappointment and struggle. He created us as men to dominate and be a reflection of himself in the earth. Join us Saturday, April 29th. Don't miss it. It's time to have some man talk.
Even when I take a back step, even when I do the two-step, no matter which step I take, God is so loving and so gracious that there's a grace for every step. Now, I don't know about you all, but there are about 100 of y'all in the room who ought to be joining me in praising God that God has kept every one of your steps safe. He made every one of your steps secure. He made every one of your steps established. Is there anybody here who understands I've not always stepped where I should have stepped, but God's grace met me in every one of my steps?
God's got a plan to restore what the palmer worm and the cankerworm and the caterpillar have destroyed. Some stuff that you thought you lost, some people who may have left. I want you to understand God's got a plan to compensate for everything that you feel is a deficiency and a defect in your life. Look at your neighbor, tell him there's nothing missing, lacking, nor broken because of who God is in my life. He is the exuberant, all-sufficient one, and I don't have need of anything because of who God is.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Morning Star Experience. Come on, anybody excited about the Morning Star Experience? We are a ministry committed to the mission of Jesus Christ, resulting in transformed lives, effective disciples, empowered communities, and of course, authentic worship. We're praising the God of our salvation that He makes room for us. This morning in our prayer call, we talked about I've seen Him do it. When you consider the fact that you are alive today, despite the frustrations, despite the challenges that you had on yesterday, what you've seen God do today is recharge your spirit, giving you restoration, giving you a restart. God has proven to you over and over again that when you put your life in His hands, He's willing and He is able to do exceedingly and abundantly more than what you can think or imagine. And so we're thanking God for the very fact that we are here with Him. We're here being blessed. We're here being used by Him. So much is happening in ministry. We're looking forward to, of course, this weekend. So much is happening this weekend, even beginning to tomorrow. Our seniors and Lady Carla will be sharing in our seniors annual tea tomorrow. That happens on Thursday. Then on Saturday, of course, is Man Talk, barbershop conversation beginning at 8:30 Saturday morning at our Family Life Center building. We're encouraging every brother to meet us there. Listen, but you do need to register. We need you to register by today. We're getting close to our max, and we don't have room for just a couple more perhaps, but we'll squeeze you in. We need you to let us know today if you'll be in attendance. Then the car show, our singles ministry will be hosting an event Saturday, cupcakes and conversation at 12 noon. And then, of course, we're just looking forward to this weekend of ministry. We know God's going to bless in the mighty way. Sunday morning, I'm preaching from the title, Who You Looking For? Who is a great text. It raises that question, who are you looking for? Everybody goes through life looking for, searching for somebody, something. And the question is, have you found what you're looking for? Key is this: you only find what you're looking for when you find the one who can provide all your need according to his riches and glory. So meet me Sunday morning, 7:15, 9:15, 11:30. Make sure you invite somebody, encourage somebody to share with us on Sunday during worship. How many of you can testify that there have been persons in your life who have constantly been a blessing to you? They're constantly there for you, helping you get through, helping you overcome. Some of them don't get the credit that they do, but they are unsung heroes in your life. You ought to encourage somebody. You ought to thank somebody today. Let them know that you are grateful for the fact that they're constantly being a blessing in your life. They're constantly there for you.
I constantly thank you. You constantly bless me. I constantly thank you for blessing me. You made a way for me, a way that I could not see. That's why I constantly thank you for blessing me. When the sun refused to shine, you gave me peace of mind. That's why I constantly thank you for blessing me. I constantly thank you. You constantly bless me. That's why I constantly thank you for blessing me. You gave me peace of mind. In you joy I find. That's why I constantly thank you. Constantly thank you for blessing me. You made a way for me, a way that I could not see. That's why I constantly thank you. Oh, for blessing me. You made a way for me, a way that I could not see. That's why I constantly thank you. Oh Lord, that's why I constantly thank you. That's why I constantly thank you for blessing me.
Constantly blessing me. There are persons in your life, persons who God sends into your space, whose only assignment is to be a blessing to you, to help you in this journey called life. And not all those persons will stay in your life forever. Some of them God sends to pass through. But what they do is leave lasting impact. And some of those persons are what we call unsung heroes. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse number 15. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse number 15. Every person, and this is every Michael Jordan, needs a Scottie Pippen. So somebody who will take some of the weight off of you. When you find yourself in situations, you need somebody who will relieve you of some of the burden. Every person, every Michael Jordan needs a Scottie Pippen. Michael couldn't have won those championships without Scottie Pippen playing on his team. Steph Curry needs Klay Thompson. Kobe had Shaq. Hakeem Olajuwon had Clyde Drexler. Everybody needs somebody to walk with them through the journey. So everybody needs somebody in life, somebody in ministry who will help you along the way. Who are those persons that God has sent into your life to help you? And hear what I'm saying, that God sends or sent into your life to help you. Their only purpose is to help you. Now, last week, we talked about these two midwives, Shiphrah and Puah. These two midwives who helped the Hebrew mothers give birth. That their assignment was, as the Hebrew mothers were birthing their children, their assignment was to be there with them, to let them know that they don't have to go through the birthing process all by themselves. They did not allow the Hebrew mothers to go through the birthing process alone. Because when you're birthing something, it can become challenging. It may become difficult. You need somebody helping to coach you through the process. These two midwives helped the Hebrew mothers give birth. Their word to them, to the Hebrew mothers, was this: I'm not going to allow you to go through this moment by yourself. I'm not going to allow you to go through this season of birthing by yourself. And so these two midwives, we dealt with this last week, they served in Egypt after the death of Joseph. As midwives, they were in position to save the Hebrew boys from death when this new Pharaoh came on the scene, who did not know Joseph and whose aim was to kill the boys, because he was afraid of their potential. And so these midwives, their impact lasted through generations. Many persons never knew their names. Even the biblical narrative, their names only mentioned once, but they saved thousands of young boys from the sword of Pharaoh. And so what we're learning is that throughout the history of the biblical text, there are persons whose impact extends beyond the few fleeting moments that their name is recorded in the Bible. That there's persons whose names are mentioned over and over again, and then there are others whose names are mentioned once. But their impact has lasted throughout the pages of the Bible. Why? Because they were constant blessings. That's where I'm landing. They were constant blessings. We're introduced to another young man here in 2 Timothy, who I consider to be an unsung hero in the biblical narrative. His name is Onesiphorus. Hard to pronounce. Onesiphorus. He's an unsung hero. What are unsung heroes? Unsung heroes are persons who don't mind being the one getting the credit. I'm going to stay there for a second. Not everybody will be applauded. Let me stay there. Some of us are so determined to get the credit, to get the applause, that we overstep our bounds. You can't, in this thing called life, this thing called ministry, get so caught up in being the one who's applauded. Sometimes God needs you to be the unsung hero, the person who makes the difference, the person who understands, I'm not the one who God has anointed for their name to be in neon lights. I'm the one who God has anointed to sit in the back and push those who are out front, keep them stable, keep them sturdy, keep them focused. I don't know who this is for, but somebody needs to understand that not everybody will be applauded. You got to come to grips with that. You cannot get caught up in wanting the applause that somebody else has. These midwives and this brother right here, Onesiphorus, who becomes a major blessing to a brother by the name of Paul. If I were to put two names on the table, Paul, and list beside him Onesiphorus, you would skip past Onesiphorus, first of all, because his name is hard to pronounce, but also because he's only mentioned once, some say maybe twice in the biblical text. But Paul is mentioned over and over again. So Paul is remembered, but the one who helped Paul, the one who anchored Paul, is the one who, watch this, God positioned with Paul so Paul could make the impact. Watch this, even while Paul was in prison. We're going to deal with it in just a second. Onesiphorus is a blessing to Paul while Paul is locked up. And watch this, I'm going to come back and deal with this. Even while Paul, some believe, was just steps away from death, Onesiphorus is the one who helps Paul in, watch this, in one of Paul's most difficult seasons. Unsung heroes are persons who don't mind not getting the credit. They're persons who don't mind pushing others to become their best. They get satisfaction that somebody else moves into their potential. Unsung heroes. They're persons who do what they do and don't need to be praised. They're persons, and I want you to understand this, they are persons, unsung heroes, who don't, watch this, necessarily get credit for great things, and their persons don't necessarily get the accolades, but they are persons who you can't do without. They are persons in your life who you can't do without. And sometimes we take them for granted because they're not as popular as others. This week, I'm going to take a look at this brother who became an anchor for the Apostle Paul. Brother, let's do this. Let's practice saying his name, Onesiphorus. You're doing okay, I think. Onesiphorus. You'll remember his name, Onesiphorus. We're introduced to him here in the book of 2 Timothy chapter 1. Look at 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 15. Verse 15 says, and this is Paul talking. Paul says, you know that everyone in the province of Asia has deserted me. Look at these closing words to Paul. He says, everyone in the province of Asia has deserted me, except, I'm going to include rather, these two brothers, Phileas and Hermogenes. A lot of these words, these names are just so weird. He says, but everyone has deserted me, including, because these two, he said, these two I thought would always be there for me. But then he says, everyone has deserted me. But then he drops this line. He says, may the Lord show mercy to the household of Onesiphorus. Why? Because he often refreshed me and was not ashamed of my chains. Now that's a whole lot right there. He often, look at the words, I tell you every so often, I tell you on a regular basis rather, that every word in a verse is significant. And look at the words here. It says, he often, we just sang the song constantly. He often refreshed me. And, I'm going to deal with this, he was not ashamed of my chains. They are persons who are ashamed of what you go through and will leave you. That they are ashamed of what you have to deal with sometimes. Go through a storm and see who's still there with you. That there's some folk who will leave you when you're going through your rough seasons. But Paul says, Onesiphorus did this. He refreshed me, and he was not ashamed of my chains. Now watch this. On the contrary, when he was in Rome, this is Paul talking about his friend again, he searched hard for me until he found me. This says a whole lot. First he says in verse 15, everyone in Asia deserted me. On the contrary, when Onesiphorus was in Rome, and watch this, in the context of this text, and I'll deal with this, you have to understand that Paul is writing, many scholars believe, the second book of Timothy to Timothy while he is in a Roman prison. He's writing these words while in jail. And he says, on the contrary, Onesiphorus did this. When he was in Rome, he searched hard for me until he found me. Someone said, why was it so hard for him to find Paul when Paul was in jail? Because he was under house arrest. And you had to find out where they were holding him. Okay, here's the illustration, or where they relate to that. A few months ago, Brittany Griner was in prison. And they said one day, late at night, they came and took her to another prison, but no one knew where they took her. Paul was under house arrest, and his boy Onesiphorus had to look hard to find him, and he did not give up until he found him. And so here's what Paul does. He says, God, I want you to do this. I'm praying a blessing over Onesiphorus' life. Look at verse 18. May the Lord grant that he will find mercy from the Lord on that day. You know very well in how many ways he helped me in Ephesus. Paul just starts dropping moments when Onesiphorus helped him in Rome and Ephesus while he was in jail. He searched hard for me until he found me. Now, understand this. Paul, in this second letter to his protege in ministry, Timothy, he's writing to Timothy from a prison cell in Rome, somewhere in Rome, and he wants Timothy to know that he feels as though his imprisonment in Rome is not going to end as it did when he's in prison in Rome the first time. This ain't Paul's first rodeo with being locked up, being in chains. And he tells Timothy, I don't think it's going to end as well as it did before. He said the last time he was acquitted, but this time Paul believes it's going to most likely end with him being killed because of his convictions. He's in jail. He doesn't think it's going to end well. He writes this letter to 2 Timothy, but he also adds a footnote, Onesiphorus refreshed me and constantly helped me while I was going through. Now, let me just put another pin here and then we'll bring it all together. In chapter 4, 2 Timothy, verse 6, this is how we know Paul is near the end of his days. 2 Timothy chapter 4 says, for I am already being poured out like a drink offering. And watch this. This is how we know what's going on. Context clues. Context clues says, and the time for my departure is near. Not his departure from prison, his departure from life. He says, I fought a good fight. I finished the race. I kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. This is important. It's important for our conversation because Paul's relationships, Paul's relationships become more pivotal in his life. Paul first warns Timothy of fake friends. Okay, he's letting us know the importance of relationships. 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 15, he warns Timothy. He says, Timothy, and he understands he's trying to prepare Timothy to carry the mantle of ministry. But he drops so many nuggets in Timothy's lap as he's making his journey to his final departure. Verse 15, chapter 1, Paul says to Timothy, you know that everyone in the province of Asia has deserted me. And so as he approaches what he believes are his final days on earth, he's feeling the anxiety of loneliness. This is important for you to understand the context. He's feeling the anxiety of loneliness. He's in prison. He can't leave. He's been arrested for his convictions. And he says to Timothy, he says, those who I thought would be there with me have deserted me. Real relevant question, good hermeneutical transfer. Have you ever had people in your life who deserted you? Ever had anybody in close who you thought was close to you, but they somehow conveniently deserted you at a moment when you needed somebody? So right now, Paul is feeling the anxiety of loneliness. He's having what I'm going to call his Gethsemane moment. When he knows what's coming, but he feels the weight of it. You've clearly understood your God-given assignment. And you were pressing toward your God-given assignment. But as you were moving closer and closer to it, you began to feel the weight of it. The responsibility that goes with doing what God has called you to do. Paul is having his Gethsemane moment, sort of like what Jesus was feeling in the Garden of Gethsemane. This is Paul's Gethsemane moment. It's a moment when you wonder if people have deserted you and if God has deserted you. Another relevant question. Have you ever wondered if God's deserted you? Nobody's ever wondered if God has left you to handle something all by yourself? You want to believe and tell yourself God's there, but sometimes it don't feel like it. Paul is having his Gethsemane moment. Now, Paul's friends who were companions in Asia have turned their backs on him, leaving him to face all by himself the worry and the difficulties of being in prison. If anybody's ever been in prison before, you wonder if a letter is coming. You wonder if anybody's going to come visit you. If when you call them, will they accept, watch this, your collect phone call? He's feeling the weight of being there all by himself. He's worried. He's upset. He's in prison, and here's the worst part about it. He's facing death. This is the context in which Paul writes this letter. Friends aren't writing him anymore. Family's not visiting anymore. And colleagues are nowhere to be found. Here's a revelation that many of us have found out to be true. Paul's persecutions have had a way of revealing to him who his real friends were. Storms will tell you who your friends are. Storms will teach you who you can count on. Don't count persons, friends, your friends, when your money's filled with, the pocket's filled with money. Don't count people's friends when things are going well in your life. Count those persons who are there with you when hell is busted loose. Paul's letting Timothy know because he's handing the mantle of ministry over to Timothy. And he says, Timothy, I want you to prepare yourself for where you're going. Prepare yourself for what's going to happen. He says, because I've been there. I've been there when things were going well and everybody was on my side, flocking to hear me preach, standing by my side. But when I got thrown in prison, Paul says, my friends deserted me. Now, he said, he's revealing to Timothy, he says, here's when you know you have real friends. Friends who are real friends, and this is so powerful. Friends who are real friends are willing to take a risk for you. Friends who are real friends are willing to take a risk for you. They'll become uncomfortable to try to make you comfortable. Someone said, I ain't got no friends then. They're willing to go through, to make a sacrifice, to inconvenience themselves. Do you understand? I'm going to deal with this in a second, because Paul knows that some of the folk who travel with him aren't really friends. He's wondering, as he sits in that prison cell, is Barnabas really a friend? Barnabas traveled with him on missionary journeys, but he hasn't come to see him in prison, hasn't written him a letter. He's wondering if Silas was a real friend. Let me offer that, like Paul, most of us have found out who our real friends are, and we are wondering who our real supporters are. Are these people really for me? And I need you to get this. Are these people really for me, or are they for what my gift can do for them? I'm going to say that again. Are these people really for me, or are they for what my gift can do for them? That's why you better stop getting so happy about the gift you have. Some folk are only there because you have a gift, not for you. Some folk are in love with your gift, not you. Paul's wondering, who's here with me? Are they really for me? Were they really for me? Or were they there just for my gift? And so Paul, as he is approaching, and this is all about Onesimus, as he is approaching his twilight years of life and ministry, is really sensitive to who he can trust. You learn who you can trust. God, I just said a whole lot. You learn who you can trust. And it's a great line. When people show you who they are, believe it. You learn who you can trust. And so this is where Onesiphorus and his impact on Paul's life is made known. Look at verse 16. May the Lord show mercy to the household of Onesiphorus, because he often refreshed me and was not ashamed of my chains. I can drop the mic right there. He said, when he was in Rome, he searched hard for me till he found out where they had me locked up at. May the Lord grant that he will find mercy from the Lord on that day. You know very well in how many ways he helped me in Ephesus. So here's the revelation that we need to explore. Onesiphorus, unlike many, often did not use Paul's imprisonment as an opportunity or an excuse to abandon him. Okay, let me say it another way. He didn't get busy when Paul couldn't do for him no more. He didn't get busy, too busy to help out Paul when Paul couldn't help him. Did you hear what I just said? So some folk have time to help you when you can help them. But when you can't help them, they're busy. I'm dealing with this unsung hero here. I want you to understand this brother Onesiphorus. So, unlike many, he didn't use this as an opportunity or an excuse to abandon Paul. Paul being in prison was not a justification for Onesiphorus to bow out of his life. And so often, when we go through storms of this magnitude, like when Paul's going through, persons conveniently exit our lives. Unsung heroes are there as long as they need to be. Onesiphorus, however, takes a different approach, and he steps up to assist Paul while Paul is going through his storm. Paul says, Onesiphorus refreshed me and was not ashamed of my chains. Now, I've given you the context of what's happening with Paul while he's writing this letter, who was there for him, context. He says, Onesiphorus refreshed me and was not ashamed of my chains. In other words, he built me back up as I was being torn down. Who's the person who, when you're torn down, helps build you back up, encourages you, just smiles at you? They may not have any money, but they can just smile with you, laugh with you. They may even cry with you. He says, he built me back up as I was being torn down, and he was not ashamed of my chains, like Peter was ashamed of the chains of Jesus. Remember that? Peter, they told us, they said, Peter, as Jesus being dragged to Calvary, he's one of them. You are like that Galilean. Peter denied knowing him. He was ashamed of the chains of Jesus, ashamed of being identified with him, what they could do with him. Onesiphorus, on the other hand, said, I don't care if you know that I'm a supporter of Paul. I'm going to stand with my boy, stand with my friend, because my purpose in his life is to refresh him, to build him back up. You need people in your life who can help build you back up. And Paul's making it clear that Onesiphorus affirmed his relationship with Paul even though Paul was in chains. Who comes to see about you when you're not doing well? Onesiphorus, some say, did his best to make Paul's final days as comfortable as possible. He knew Paul was dying, sentenced to death, wouldn't be there much longer. But he said, I'm going to still be there with you. I'm not going to let you go out by yourself. I'm going to encourage you as long as I can, because this is my gift to you. So what did he do? What did Onesiphorus do for Paul? He provided the mental and the emotional strength that Paul needed to keep going. Isn't it crucial when you're going through that somebody's willing to provide to you mental and emotional strength? When you're broken, you're facing hard times, but you're not sure how much longer you can hold on. He provided the mental and the emotional strength that Paul needed. Onesiphorus provided for Paul those things that his Roman captors could not provide. And what's interesting, and a good piece of information to know, is that the name Onesiphorus means bringer of profit or advantage. His name means bringer of profit or advantage. I bring to you the advantage that you need, the profit that you need, the strength that you need, the anchoring that you need. I'm going to bring this to you because I know you don't have it. I'm bringing you what I know you need. That's what his name means, which means he lived up to his name. He gave Paul the help that he needed, the advantage that he needed. Even if it was just a mental advantage to know. Sometimes just knowing somebody's there is the mental advantage you need to keep pressing. He gave him, Paul's in prison. He's in chains. He knows the time of his departure is near. He's already writing the words, I fought a good fight. I finished the race. There's laid for me a crown of righteousness. He knows the end is near. But what he needs now is the mental capacity to keep pressing till God says it's time. So Onesiphorus provided the mental, the emotional strength that he needed, the help that he needed. And his name meant, Onesiphorus' name meant bringer of profit or advantage. Now, here's something else we've got to bring attention to. This was a season in Paul's life when he could not really do much for anybody. He was in a moment he couldn't do much, give much. But there's somebody who's willing to help him when Paul couldn't do much for him. And I'm rewinding. I said it earlier. You need people in your life who are there not for what you can give to them. So some folk, and you better be, I'm just helping you, some folk are only there for what you can give to them. Are you with me? The story makes it so clear. Now, here's the point. We need people in our lives who are not always looking for something in return. Life is not always about give and take. Life is sometimes simply about give. I'm going to stay there. Life is not always about give and take. Life is sometimes about give. God blesses you to give. You didn't get it. Sometimes God blesses you to simply give. It ain't about give and take. I often laugh when I'm in marriage counseling with persons, pre-marriage counseling, and everybody has this crazy belief that marriage is 50-50. I laugh so hard to myself every time I hear that. We could do everything. Everything will be equal. No, it ain't. Never has been, never will be. It's about give. It's not always about give and take. God positions you to be a blessing. Stop worrying about what someone else can give back to you. And do it and be genuine about it. Some folk aren't genuine in their giving. That's another Bible study. Some folk give so you can give something back to them. They want the applause. No, Onesiphorus understood something. Life sometimes is about give. Stop always looking for something in return. Stop looking for an opportunity in return for what you do. That's not why God gifted you. That's not why God gave you a talent. Stop looking for an applause in return. Stop looking for a thank you. So sometimes you just have to do what's right. Here's what happens. I know I got to push. Here's what happens that means more than anything else Paul could have given back to Onesiphorus, because, quite frankly, Paul did have something to give. He did have something to give. Look at verse 16. May the Lord show mercy to the household of Onesiphorus. In other words, he asked the blessing of God. How about doing this? Those unsung heroes in your life, pray the blessing of God over their life. Pray the blessing of God over somebody's life. Paul asked God to bless him. And perhaps what meant more to Onesiphorus than anything else Paul could give him was the blessing of God. Don't you understand the best thing you can give to somebody or ask God to give somebody is God's blessing? The best thing you can offer to somebody is the blessing of God. Who have you been praying the blessing of God over? You've been praying that God make them rich, grant them the desire of their heart. No, pray this prayer. May the Lord show mercy. Unsung hero, isn't this interesting? The unsung hero, not Barnabas, not Silas, but the unsung hero receives the blessing of God. Because, and here's why, he understood the privilege and the responsibility of being a blessing to those who may not have been able to give tangible stuff back. He got the most valuable thing in life, the blessing of God. This could really preach. He received the blessing of God in return for his kindness. He received the blessing of God for taking a risk, for making a sacrifice. Instead of looking for your name to be celebrated, pray for the blessing of God. God bless you and keep you. His face shine upon you. The blessing of God. That's what you want. May he bless you and keep you. May his face shine. Isn't that what you really want in life? The blessing of God. And there's a text, and I'll close here. Beatitudes, Matthew 5, verse 7. Here's what happens. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Y'all ain't get. Blessed are the merciful, for in your time you will be shown mercy. And there's something every one of us need at some point. It's mercy. You need mercy. Blessed are the merciful. I got to stop. For they will be shown mercy. And look at what happens to Onesiphorus. May the Lord show mercy. Not just to him, but to his household. To those who are connected to him. And see, what happens when you do right? Those around you get the overflow of what's coming your way. And you those of you who have children know there are moments when your children need some mercy. they need some of that grace. And because you've done right, mercy just flows. Sometimes we don't know what to shout about, but when the mercy just starts flowing, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Can we play that? May his face shine upon you, bless you, and keep you. Upon you. That's what God does.
Lord bless you and keep
Pray this prayer for somebody today.
Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Yeah.
Isn't that what we want? Yeah. The mercy, the blessing of God. This unsung hero, Paul prays a blessing over his life. For this very reason, he refreshed me. He was there when I was going through. When others had left me, he came to see about me. And he was not ashamed of my chains. Last week, these midwives, today, Onesiphorus, unsung heroes whose impact lasted. We're still reading about him. Some say it's another brother named in the book of Philemon. It's a diversion of the name Onesiphorus. They say it's the same, and we're still studying that in the book of Philemon. But his name is mentioned no more than once, no more than twice in the biblical text. But the impact that he makes lasts forever. Listen, I want to prepare right now to lift our Bible study offering. Prepare yourselves to give. I want to ask every person, as we also do, to give a gift of at least $10 today, every person to do that. Let's prepare ourselves to give. If you weren't here Sunday, bring your tithes, your offerings today. We are a blessed church. Saturday is going to be a great day of ministry. Begin at 8:30 with a men's talk, barbershop conversation. Today is the last day to get registered for that. No tickets are not being sold at the door on Saturday. Tickets are not being sold at the door on Saturday. We've got to give the caterer accurate numbers. Brothers, 8:30 is the time. Breakfast begins at 8:30. Full breakfast. Ain't that continental stuff? Full breakfast. Full breakfast. 9 o'clock we begin this conversation. Men and God. How do men grow in God? How do you grow your relationship? How do you be strong, watch this, but also faithful to God? Can you be strong and holy? Of course you can. We'll deal with that with the brothers on Saturday. Then at 10 o'clock, car show. Everybody come to this lot for the car show starting at 10 o'clock. Antique cars will be on site. 1 o'clock, we'll have a motorcycle blessing for those who ride throughout the summer months. Ask God's blessing upon them. 12 o'clock, our singles ministry is having cupcakes and conversation in the Security Boulevard buildings, where every building will be used on the campus on this coming Saturday. God's blessed us to be able to have property and space, and we're going to use it to his glory. So God's blessed us real good. Saturday, singles meet us there 12 to 2. Bike blessing here at 1. Car show starts at 10. 8:30, breakfast for the brothers. Faith Fest 2023. I'm excited, y'all. Faith Fest 2023. Pastor Reggie Shaw, Pastor Sharon Riley, myself, we're sharing the word on those 3 nights. We're looking forward to a move of God. What are we celebrating? faith. Anybody who's ever had to walk in faith? Anybody ever had to live by faith before? We're celebrating faith on our Faith Fest. Make sure you get those dates in your calendar. May 16th, 17th, 18th. Everybody, if you can't make it to the building, meet us online. We celebrate 127 years as church. 127 years as church. Looking forward to that. We're asking every person on church anniversary, the third Sunday in May, to give a special gift of $127 to go towards scholarships. Some will give $1,027. Some will give the $127. Some will do the very best they can. But we're giving. We want our young people to be able to go to school, go to college, further education. Had a member come to me and say, can we also do something for persons who may not go to college, but who may go to trade schools? We're going to do that also to trade. Now, everybody goes to college. Some do trade school approach. We'll be a blessing to them also. Amen. We're giving right now. We're thanking God. We're preparing to close out. Prayers for Brother Edward Carrington, pastor of his wife, Michelle. Her service will be tomorrow. Wake at 10 o'clock, home going 10:30 in the sanctuary, here in the sanctuary. Come on, let's all stand. May the Lord past Sunday evening prayer service was powerful. If you didn't tune in, I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel today. You want that experience. It was a great, powerful moment. Don't miss May. Don't miss May 28th. What happens when women pray in June? 4th Sunday, what happens when men pray? It's going to be a great time. Make sure you meet us in prayer. God, we thank you. God, we honor you. God, we bless your name. Thank you, God, for unsung heroes, persons who are willing to take a risk for us. Bless them. We pray your blessing upon them. We pray your blessing upon the entire Morning Star family. Keep us in the palm of your hand, God, we pray. In Jesus. Let's close out with that song.
The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine